My wedding night. Mother grabbed the mic and laughed. My daughter is just the most expensive failed investment of my life. The polite applause felt like a slap. Father demanded his money. Who's paying back the venue deposit in front of guests, business partners, and my in-laws? I set down my bouquet, removed my veil, walked straight out of the Grand Alder Hotel, and that very night opened my first business account. They thought I left the reception out of shame. I left to settle scores. 600 days later, I sat across from them in the auction room holding their own debt papers. My name is Elena Hart, and I learned the true price of family at my own wedding reception. The Grand Alder Hotel's ballroom sparkled with $5,000 worth of orchids and fairy lights, all charged to the Whitford Promise Foundation's community outreach budget, though I wouldn't discover that detail until much later. 200 guests sat at tables draped in ivory linen, raising champagne flutes as my mother, Marjorie Hart, approached the microphone with her practiced charity gala smile. "Before we toast the happy couple," she began, her voice carrying that false warmth she'd perfected over 20 years of fundraising, "I simply must share something about our dear Elena." My stomach tightened. Beside me, Evan shifted uncomfortably in his rented tuxedo. "You know, Calvin and I have invested so much in this girl." She gestured toward my father, who stood near the bar, already 3 whiskeys deep. Private schools, tutoring, that gap year in Europe to find herself. The crowd chuckled. And what did we get a daughter who insisted on studying operations management instead of joining the family business? The ROI on this one. She paused for effect. Let's just say she's been our most expensive failed investment. The laughter was scattered, uncertain. My cousin filmed everything on her phone, grinning like she'd won the lottery. Calvin stumbled forward, grabbing the mic. "Speaking of investments, who's paying me back for this reception $28,000 for what? So she can marry a junior accountant who drives a Corolla." He squinted at Evan's parents, decent people from Denver who owned a small printing shop. "Hope you folks brought your checkbook." The defensive coordinator from my high school, invited as a courtesy, looked at his wife and quietly stood to leave. Others followed. "Oh, we're not done." My Aunt Rebecca connected her laptop to the projection screen. "We made a little video tribute." The screen lit up with photos from my awkward teenage years, overlaid with mocking captions. Elena at 16, still believing in fairy tales. Elena's college graduation. Congratulations on the most expensive piece of paper. The final image me in my wedding dress from earlier that day, edited with a price tag hanging from my neck. $175,000 raised and counting. The room had gone silent except for nervous coughs and shifting chairs. Evan's mother was crying quietly. His father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. I stood up slowly, my hand steady as I unpinned my grandmother's pearl hair comb, the something borrowed Marjorie had insisted I wear. I set it on the table next to the untouched wedding cake. "Elena, sit down," Marjorie hissed, finally noticing the shift in the room's energy. "Don't make a scene." I removed my veil with deliberate care, folding it once, twice. The photographer they'd hired another expense billed to the foundation lowered his camera. "The scene," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the wireless mic still clipped to my dress, "has already been made." I unclipped the mic, placed it next to my bouquet white roses and baby's breath, chosen by Marjorie because they photographed well, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the marble floor in the sudden silence. "If you leave now, don't bother coming back," Calvin shouted. "You're done. No more family money. No more connections. No more." The ballroom doors closed behind me, cutting off his threats. In the lobby, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Maya Ruiz, my friend from business school who'd been trying to recruit me for a startup venture. "Remember that LLC we discussed? File the paperwork tonight. I'm in." Her response came within seconds. "Already have the forms ready. Knew those people would push you too far eventually. Your apartment offer still stands." I glanced back at the ballroom doors. Through the glass panels, I could see the chaos guests leaving, Evan arguing with his parents, Marjorie frantically trying to restore order while Calvin berated the catering staff about portion sizes. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message made my blood run cold. If you want to know why they felt bold enough to humiliate you like that, look into the Whitford Promise Foundation's books. A friend? I screenshot the message, then ordered an Uber to Maya's apartment. As the car pulled up, I took one last look at my wedding bouquet through the ballroom door's window, abandoned on the head table like a surrender flag. I wasn't surrendering. I was regrouping. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror, taking in the wedding dress. Rough night. No, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. It's the best thing that could have happened. The morning after my wedding, I woke up on Maya's couch, still wearing my reception dress. She'd already been up for hours, laptop open, incorporation documents spread across her coffee table. Delaware LLC, filed at 3:47 a.m., she announced, sliding papers toward me. Waypoint Metrics is officially born. I also canceled your honeymoon flights and got 70% back. My phone had 43 missed calls, 30 from my parents, 12 from Evan, 1 from his mother. I deleted the voicemail app entirely. Evan's outside, Maya said quietly. Been there since 6. I told him you'd talk when you're ready. I changed into Maya's jeans and a Colorado State hoodie, then met him on the front steps. He looked exhausted, still in his wedding clothes minus the tie. I'm sorry, he started, for what you didn't do anything. Exactly. He rubbed his face. I just sat there while we both knew what my family was. I kept my voice steady, but knowing and experiencing are different things. We talked for 20 minutes. No anger, no blame. Just two people acknowledging that what had started with genuine affection had been crushed under the weight of family dysfunction. We agreed to file for annulment unconsummated marriage, mutual consent, clean break. By afternoon, Maya and I were in her Honda Civic, driving to meet our first potential client. She'd leveraged her contacts from her supply chain consulting days to get us a meeting with Everloft, a furniture retailer struggling with last-mile delivery costs. You sure you're ready for this? Maya asked as we pulled into Everloft's corporate office in Aurora. I've never been more ready for anything. The meeting room smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Tom Hendricks, Everloft's COO, looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. We're bleeding 12% on delivery costs, he said, spreading printouts across the table. 7 distribution centers, 320 daily routes, and somehow we're still missing 30% of our delivery windows. I studied his heat maps, noticed the overlap patterns immediately. Your routing software is optimizing for distance, not time. See these clusters. I traced my finger along the delivery zones. You're sending trucks through school zones during pickup hours, construction corridors during peak work times. The algorithm doesn't account for temporal variables. Tom leaned forward. Can you fix it? Give us your data for one distribution center, raw numbers every delivery, timestamp, driver note, and customer complaint for the last 90 days. We'll build you a proof of concept in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? He looked skeptical. Maya jumped in. Free trial. If we can't reduce your delivery costs by at least 8% on that center, you pay nothing. We shook hands. The next 14 days blurred together. Maya's studio apartment became our headquarters. We survived on takeout Thai food and constructed a predictive model that incorporated traffic patterns, weather data, driver break requirements, and customer availability windows. I coded until my eyes burned, building dashboards that would make route optimization dynamic rather than static. My mother called once, leaving a voicemail about how I was having a tantrum and should apologize before the family's reputation was permanently damaged. I forwarded it to Maya for laughs. The Everloft trial exceeded expectations: 11% cost reduction, 18% improvement in on-time delivery. Tom signed a 90-day contract on the spot, with a caveat: deliver these results across all 7 centers, and I'll introduce you to the Front Range Retail Association, 15 other companies, all fighting the same delivery battles. That night, Maya cracked open a bottle of champagne she'd been saving. $25,000 for 90 days. Not Fortune 500 money, but it's our money, I said. Clean money. Earned money. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Check Hart & Mason's public filing records. Cross-reference with Whitford Promise Foundation's vendor payments. Same friend. I showed Maya the message. You think someone's trying to help you, or trying to use me. I saved the number. Either way, information is information. Maya pulled up the county recorder's website. What are we looking for? Patterns, I said, thinking of my father's slurred insults about money, my mother's calculated cruelty. In my experience, people who humiliate others publicly are usually hiding something worth protecting. We found the first discrepancy within an hour, a foundation payment of $80,000 for community center renovations paid to Hart & Mason, but no corresponding building permits filed. Then another, and another. Elena, Maya whispered, this is fraud. I finished. They're laundering charitable donations through fake construction projects. I thought about the wedding reception, the $28,000 my father had screamed about, the way my mother had laughed about investments and returns. We focus on Waypoint first, I decided. Build the company, establish credibility, accumulate resources, then, when we're strong enough, we look deeper into this. Maya nodded. The long game? The smart game, I corrected. They taught me something valuable at that wedding. Family bonds are just another form of leverage, and leverage works both ways. 3 months into running Waypoint, the anonymous messages had formed a clear picture. My source, who finally identified herself as Sandra, a former accountant at Whitford Promise, had been feeding me documentation through encrypted emails after midnight. I kept copies of everything before Marjorie forced me out, Sandra explained during our first phone call, her voice bitter with years of resentment. Your mother destroyed my career when I questioned a suspicious transaction. Now you need to see what your parents really are. The evidence was damning. Internal foundation emails showed Marjorie discussing Elena's behavioral issues and the need to maintain financial control through reputational management. One message to Calvin, dated 2 years before my wedding, read, if she ever tries to break away, we need the community to see her as unstable and ungrateful. Start laying groundwork now. I stared at my laptop screen in Maya's kitchen, feeling something cold crystallize in my chest. They planned it, Maya said, reading over my shoulder. The wedding humiliation wasn't spontaneous. It was strategic. The scholarship fund they'd claimed to have created for me. It was real on paper. But the disbursements went to Hart & Mason for administrative oversight and facility management for a building that didn't exist. My education had been funded by stolen charitable donations, creating a paper trail that made me look complicit. Look at this. I pulled up another document. Every gift they gave me after age 18, car down payment, apartment security deposit, even my laptop, all recorded as foundation educational grants. They've been building a case that I'm a charity fraud beneficiary. Maya whistled low. If you'd tried to report them without knowing this, I'd look like the guilty one trying to deflect blame. I closed the laptop, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. The wedding speech wasn't just humiliation, it was imprisonment, make me too ashamed to stay, too tainted to leave successfully. That evening, Tom Hendricks called with good news and bad news. The good Everloft wanted to expand our contract to all distribution centers immediately. The bad, someone had been calling his board members, suggesting Waypoint was unstable because its founder had abandoned her own wedding and had a history of taking family money under questionable circumstances. I don't care about gossip, Tom said. Your numbers speak for themselves, but I wanted you to know someone's actively trying to sabotage you. After the call, I made a decision. I drove to the office of Patricia Lowell, a forensic attorney Maya had researched who specialized in nonprofit fraud. Her office was sparse, functional, intimidating in its simplicity. I need 2 things, I told her after laying out the evidence. Protection from defamation and a path to exposing the foundation's fraud without implicating myself as a beneficiary. Patricia reviewed the documents for an hour in complete silence while I sat rigid in the leather chair. Finally, she looked up. "Your parents made one crucial mistake," she said. "They filed federal 990 forms claiming you were an independent scholarship recipient, not a family member. That was to maximize their tax deductions, but it legally separates you from any fiduciary responsibility." Relief flooded through me. "However," she continued, "pursuing this will destroy them. Not just financially criminal charges, professional disgrace, possible prison time. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my mother's calculated smile as she called me a failed investment, my father's red face demanding repayment in front of everyone who mattered to me. "They were prepared to destroy me," I said quietly. "They did destroy the person I used to be." Patricia nodded. "Then we proceed carefully. First, we document the defamation record, every call they make, every lie they spread. Build a defensive case. Meanwhile, I'll prepare a whistleblower complaint with the state attorney general." The foundation's nonprofit status makes this a state matter initially. How long? 6 months to build an airtight case. Can you survive their sabotage that long? I thought about Waypoint's growing client base, Maya's unwavering support, the clean simplicity of earning my own way. "I can survive anything now," I said. "They taught me that at my wedding." That night, I found a note slipped under Maya's apartment door. My mother's handwriting. "You have 48 hours to apologize publicly and return to the family. Otherwise, we'll ensure no legitimate business in Colorado will work with you. Your father has connections you can't imagine." I photographed the note, emailed it to Patricia with the subject line "Documentation Number 1. Maya found me on the balcony at 2:15 a.m., staring at the city lights. "You know what the ironic part is," I said. "They created exactly what they feared, a daughter with nothing left to lose and everything to prove." "And the skills to do it," Maya added. "Your operational analysis, applied to their own corruption. It's almost poetic." I smiled grimly. "Not poetry, justice, with interest rates they never calculated." My phone buzzed. Tom Hendricks. "Board voted. Full contract approved. Also, 3 Front Range members want meetings next week. Whatever they're saying about you, your work is saying more." The war was escalating, but for the first time in my life, I was fighting on terrain I'd chosen, with weapons I'd earned, for a future they couldn't control. The wedding humiliation hadn't broken me. It had been my liberation. The sabotage escalated exactly as Patricia predicted. Within 2 weeks of my mother's ultimatum passing, the attacks became systematic and vicious. It started at the Whitford Country Club's monthly mixer. According to Tom, who heard it secondhand, Calvin held court at the bar, bourbon in hand, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd stolen proprietary algorithms from Hart & Mason's logistics software. "Classic Elena," he reportedly said, "takes everything we taught her and claims she invented it." The lie was absurd. Hart & Mason built strip malls, not software, but it spread like wildfire through Colorado's insular business community. Then came the anonymous email blast to all Front Range Retail Association members. The subject line, "Due Diligence Alert Waypoint Metrics." The message detailed my history of emotional instability, complete with photos from the wedding reception and claims that I'd suffered a psychological break that night. They'd even attached a fabricated psychological evaluation with forged signatures. "We lost Riverside Markets," Maya informed me grimly on a Thursday morning. Their CEO said he couldn't risk association with reputational uncertainties. I was reviewing the termination notice when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Miss Hart, this is Jeffrey Dalton from the Denver Business Journal. I'm calling about some interesting claims your parents are making about intellectual property theft. Care to comment?" I put him on speaker so Maya could hear. "Mr. Dalton, I suggest you have your legal department review any claims carefully before publication. Waypoint's algorithms are proprietary and documented. Hart & Mason is a construction company with 0 software assets. They're saying you had access to their trade secrets through family connections. What trade secrets would those be? Exactly concrete mixing ratios, rebar placement patterns. I kept my voice level. I have a question for you. Mr. Dalton, did they happen to mention their foundation's financial irregularities while making these accusations? Silence. Then, what irregularities? No comment at this time. But you might want to investigate why someone would launch such aggressive attacks against their own daughter's legitimate business. Good day. Patricia was pleased when I reported the conversation. Perfect. You've planted the seed without making accusations. Now we accelerate our timeline. She'd discovered something crucial. The Whitford Promise Foundation had failed to file a required Schedule B attachment listing major donors for the previous tax year. This oversight created a window to subpoena their complete financial records through a public interest disclosure request. Your parents are also getting sloppy with their attacks, Patricia noted. The forged psychological evaluation is a felony. We now have criminal leverage. But the damage to Waypoint was real. 2 more clients suspended contracts pending review. Our revenue dropped 40% in 3 weeks. Maya started talking about taking consultant work to keep us afloat. No, I said firmly. We double down. Use the Everloft success to get into markets they can't influence. I cold-called companies in Wyoming and New Mexico, outside my parents' reach. It meant 18-hour days and surviving on convenience store coffee. But we landed 2 new clients within a month. Then Patricia delivered unexpected news. The FBI's nonprofit fraud division wants to talk. Apparently, your parents' foundation has been on their radar for minor discrepancies. Your documentation just gave them probable cause for a full investigation. The meeting was in a federal building in downtown Denver, all beige walls and bad fluorescent lighting. Agent Sarah Coleman, a woman with sharp eyes and an economy of words, reviewed our evidence methodically. This level of documentation suggests inside knowledge, she said finally. I've had a source, former employee with her own grievances. Sandra Michaels. We know. She filed a wrongful termination suit 3 years ago that was sealed out of court. Coleman tapped the foundation's tax returns. These discrepancies alone are worth several million in redirected funds, but we need more to prove intent. Then let me go on record, I said, about the wedding, the scholarship fund, all of it. Coleman studied me. You understand that cooperating makes you a material witness. Your parents will know you're involved. They declared war first. I'm just finishing it. That evening, I returned to Maya's apartment to find an envelope shoved under the door. Inside was a single photo me entering the federal building that afternoon. On the back, my father's handwriting. Last chance. Stop now or we destroy everything. I showed it to Maya, then called Patricia. They're having me followed. That's stalking. Correct. Absolutely. Document everything. And Elena, it might be time to play offense. I knew what she meant. For weeks, I'd held back from using the nuclear option, the documented proof that $28,000 of my wedding had been charged to the foundation as a community outreach event, the same wedding where they'd humiliated me publicly. Not yet, I decided. Let them think they're winning a little longer. Maya looked at me with concern. This is consuming you. No, I corrected. It's refining me. Every attack they make teaches me something about power, leverage, and survival. They're giving me a masterclass in corporate warfare without realizing it. My phone buzzed. Tom Hendricks. Board met tonight. Unanimous decision Waypoint contract not only continues but expands. We don't bend to bullies. Also, Kiara Benson from Stratton Capital wants to meet you. She specializes in distressed asset acquisition. I looked up Stratton Capital. They were corporate raiders, the kind who bought struggling companies and debt portfolios. Why would she want to meet me? Maya wondered. I had a suspicion. Because someone who's winning a war against entrenched interests might be useful to someone in her business. The game was changing. My parents had taught me to be prey at that wedding. They never imagined I'd evolve into a predator. Kiara Benson didn't look like a corporate raider. She looked like a yoga instructor flowing cardigan, minimalist jewelry, serene smile, but her eyes tracked everything like a predator cataloging prey. Tom Hendricks speaks highly of you, she began, stirring oat milk into her coffee at the downtown Denver cafe she'd suggested. Says you saved Everloft $8 million annually. The algorithm did that. I just built it. Modesty doesn't suit someone at war with their parents. She pulled out an iPad, showed me a financial screenshot. Hardin Mason Builders, leveraged to the hilt on 3 projects. Your father borrowed against future receivables from a highway contract that's 6 months behind schedule. I kept my expression neutral. Interesting. What's more interesting is that Whitford Community Bank is packaging their debt with 17 other construction loans into a distressed asset bundle. They're shopping it to private buyers at 30 cents on the dollar. Maya leaned forward. Why would anyone want distressed construction debt? Kiara smiled. Because buried in that package is a personal guarantee from Calvin Hart on a separate property Sandbar Lodge, a lake house worth $2.3 million. If the construction loan defaults, the creditor can call the guarantee and force sale of the lodge. My pulse quickened. The bank doesn't know about the federal investigation yet. Exactly. Once that news breaks, Hardin Mason becomes radioactive. No more contracts. No way to service debt. Default triggers automatically. Kiara closed the iPad. I'm willing to partner with you on this acquisition. My capital. Your motivation. What's your angle? I collect interesting people. Elena, someone willing to systematically dismantle their parents' empire is exactly the kind of interesting I value. Consider it an investment in future collaboration. That evening, I met with Noah Sterling, the angel investor Tom had introduced me 2 weeks earlier. His penthouse office overlooked the Front Range, mountains purple in the setting sun. Kiara called me, he said without preamble. Wants me to provide secondary funding for your debt play. I'm interested, but I need to understand what's your end game. I'd been asking myself the same question since the wedding. Justice with compound interest. He laughed, short and sharp. I can work with that. Here's my offer. I'll provide $500,000 toward the debt package acquisition through an SPV special purpose vehicle. Anonymous. Untraceable to you until you choose to reveal ownership. In exchange, I want first look at Waypoint's Series A when you're ready to raise. Why would you? Because your parents represent everything wrong with regional business culture. Old money protecting old money through intimidation and graft. Disrupting that's worth $500,000 just for the entertainment value. Maya and I spent the next week structuring the SPV with Patricia's guidance. We named it Mountain View Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware with a Wyoming trust as the member completely opaque ownership structure. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation was gaining momentum. Agent Coleman called with updates. We've frozen the foundation's accounts pending investigation. Your parents don't know yet the orders are sealed, but they will within 10 days. The timing was perfect. Whitford Community Bank accepted Mountain View's offer for the distressed debt package, $12 million in face value loans for $3.6 million cash. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday at 3 p.m. Thursday night. Calvin left a voicemail on my phone. His words were slurred drunk again. You ungrateful little bitch. Think you're smart I built this town. I own people you can't even imagine. When I'm done with you, you won't be able to get a job washing dishes. I forwarded it to Patricia and Agent Coleman. Another nail for the coffin. Friday morning brought chaos. The FBI had raided the Whitford Promise Foundation offices at 6 a.m. By noon, local news was broadcasting footage of boxes being carried out while Marjorie stood in the parking lot, her perfect composure finally cracking. Calvin was at Hardin Mason's headquarters when federal agents arrived with their own warrant. According to a contact at the scene, he tried to flee through the loading dock but was stopped by uniformed officers. At 2:45 p.m., I sat in Whitford Community Bank's conference room as Mountain View Holdings' authorized representative. The bank's asset manager didn't recognize me. Why would he? I was just another anonymous buyer in a business suit Maya had helped me pick out. The sellers are motivated, he explained unnecessarily. With the federal investigation announced this morning, they're accepting your offer immediately. I signed where indicated, keeping my handwriting deliberately generic. At 3:22 p.m., Mountain View Holdings officially owned $12 million in distressed construction debt, including Calvin Hart's personal guarantee on Sandbar Lodge. That evening, Maya and I sat in our new office. We'd finally moved out of her apartment into a proper workspace reviewing the documents. According to the loan terms, Hart and Mason has 60 days to cure the default, Maya noted. But with federal seizure of assets, they can't possibly pay, I finished, which means in 61 days, we can enforce the guarantee and force the sale of Sandbar Lodge. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized Sandra's encrypted messaging app. Congratulations on the acquisition. One more gift, check your email. The attachment was a recording from a Whitford Promise Board meeting 2 years ago. My mother's voice, clear and confident. Elena will never amount to anything without our control. She's too weak, too emotional. The wedding will be our chance to make that clear to everyone. I saved the file to 3 different drives. Evidence for the defamation case, but more importantly, proof that I'd been right all along. They hadn't just failed as parents. They'd actively conspired to fail me. Now I owned their future, hidden behind shell companies and legal structures they'd never see coming. The Whitford Promise Foundation's annual gala was scheduled for Saturday, November 15th, at 8 p.m., 2 weeks after the FBI raids. Most people assumed it would be canceled. They assumed wrong. Marjorie had sent invitations weeks earlier, and her pride wouldn't let her admit defeat. The event would proceed, she announced through gritted teeth to remaining board members, as a show of transparency and resilience during these unfounded accusations. I received my invitation through Maya, who'd been added to the guest list as Waypoint's COO after we donated $25,000 to the foundation 6 months earlier, back when I was documenting their financial flows. "You're not seriously going," Maya said, watching me RSVP yes for both of us. With bells on, and Patricia, and a very special presentation. Patricia had spent the week preparing what she called the nuclear filing, a comprehensive whistleblower complaint with attached evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. But instead of filing it with the court, we had a different plan. The night of the gala, I wore a black cocktail dress I'd bought with Waypoint's first profit check. No borrowed jewelry, no family heirlooms, everything on me was earned. The Grand Alder Hotel's ballroom had been transformed again, though less lavishly than my wedding. I noticed the cheaper flowers, the house wine instead of champagne. Federal asset freezes had consequences. Marjorie stood near the entrance, her smile rigid as a mannequin's. When she saw me, her face went white, then red. "How dare you? I'm a donor," I said calmly, walking past her. $25,000. Remember, that entitles me to a table and a tax deduction, though I'm questioning whether I'll get either. The room buzzed with whispers as I found my table front and center. Naturally, Tom Hendricks was there with his wife, having insisted on attending as my corporate support. Several Front Range members had also come, curious about the drama. Calvin wasn't there. House arrest pending federal charges made attendance complicated. At 8:45 p.m., Marjorie took the microphone for her annual president's address. Her hands shook slightly as she shuffled her notes. "Ladies and gentlemen, these have been challenging weeks for our foundation. Baseless accusations have been made. I'd like to address those accusations." I stood up, my own wireless microphone in hand. Maya had convinced the AV technician that we were scheduled speakers. The screens around the room lit up with Patricia's presentation. "Good evening. I'm Elena Hart, former beneficiary of this foundation's scholarship program." I clicked to the first slide, a flowchart of money moving from donations through the foundation to Hart and Mason. "I'm here to provide transparency about where your generous donations actually went." Marjorie lunged for the AV booth, but Patricia stepped in her path, papers in hand. "Mrs. Hart, you've been served. Defamation, fraud, and conspiracy charges. I'd advise against any actions that could be construed as obstruction." The room was dead silent as I continued. "Slide 2 invoice for my wedding reception, $28,000, charged to the foundation as community outreach. The same wedding where I was publicly humiliated by the foundation's president. I clicked again. Slide 347 fake construction invoices totaling $3.1 million, all paid to Hart and Mason for buildings that don't exist. Board members were standing now, some heading for exits, others pulling out phones. Slide 4. An email from Marjorie Hart stating that I, quote, would never amount to anything without our control. This was her justification for using foundation funds to manipulate my life. I clicked to the final slide, a photo of the foundation's mission statement. You promised to help young people achieve their potential. Instead, you helped yourselves to their futures. Marjorie grabbed a microphone from another table. This is all lies. She's unstable. Vindictive, tell them about your breakdown at your wedding. You mean the wedding you paid for with stolen charity funds. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system, and played the recording Sandra had sent Marjorie's voice explaining how the wedding would be their chance to break me. The state attorney general's representative Patricia had made sure he'd attend, was taking rapid notes. One more thing, I announced, as of yesterday at 4:30 p.m. Mountain View Holdings, which I control, officially owns Hart and Mason's debt portfolio, which means I now own the loans that keep my father's company alive. Marjorie dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a shriek of feedback. Default was declared this morning due to missed payments during the asset freeze. You have 30 days to cure $12 million in debt, or I foreclose on every asset, including Sandbar Lodge. I set down my microphone gently. Consider it my wedding gift to you, the gift of consequences. Security approached, hired by the foundation, but unsure who to escort out. The state attorney general's representative stood up. Mrs. Hart, I'll need you to come with me. We have questions about these allegations. As Marjorie was led away, she turned back to me. Her perfect composure finally shattered completely. You've destroyed everything. No, I replied, steady as stone. I've audited everything. You destroyed it all by yourself. I just kept the receipts. The room erupted in chaos. Donors demanding answers. Board members resigning on the spot. Reporters who'd been tipped off pushing through the doors. Maya appeared at my elbow. Time to go. Almost. I walked to the microphone one last time. For anyone interested in supporting actual youth development, Waypoint Metrics is launching a legitimate scholarship fund for operations management students. Full transparency, no family connections, just merit and need. Tom Hendricks started clapping. Others joined in, not the polite applause of my wedding humiliation, but genuine support from people who recognized justice when they saw it. As we left, I placed my gala program on the same table where I'd left my wedding bouquet months ago. Another ceremony, another exit. But this time I wasn't running. I was winning. The Whitford County Courthouse auction room smelled like old carpet and desperation. December 20th, 10 a.m. sharp. 37 degrees outside, but Calvin was sweating through his only remaining suit. The FBI had seized his others as potential evidence. I sat in the third row, Patricia on my left, Kiara on my right. Maya had wanted to come, but I'd asked her to stay at Waypoint. This was personal. The auctioneer, a bored-looking man named Dennis, read the legal notice in a monotone voice. Foreclosure auction of real property located at 4420 Sandbar Drive, pursuant to default on secured debt held by Mountain View Holdings, LLC. Calvin's lawyer, a public defender, since his assets were frozen, whispered urgently in his ear. Marjorie sat behind them, out on bail, wearing a coat I recognized from 3 winters ago. How the mighty had fallen. Opening bid set at $1.8 million, Dennis announced. 2 other bidders had shown up, local real estate investors who smelled blood in the water. One raised his paddle. 1.85. Kiara raised ours. 2 million. The other investor, 2.1. This continued for 6 minutes. At 2.4 million, both other bidders dropped out. It was just us and the minimum reserve price. Going once at 2.4 million. Wait! Calvin stood up, his voice cracking. I want to speak to the creditor. Dennis looked annoyed. Sir, you have no standing to. The creditor is my daughter. The room went silent. The other bidders turned to stare at me. I stood up slowly, walked to the front of the room. "Mr. Hart." I kept my voice professionally distant. "You have something to say." His face was blotchy, eyes bloodshot. The confident man who'd berated me at my wedding was gone. "Elena, please, it's our family home. Your mother's grandfather built that dock. The same mother who called me a failed investment. The same family home you leveraged to fund your fraud." "We can work something out," Marjorie interjected, standing despite her lawyer's attempts to stop her. "You've made your point?" "My point." I pulled out 2 documents from my briefcase. "Here are my points. Document 1, a signed confession admitting to the defamation campaign against Waypoint Metrics, including the forged psychological evaluation and false claims of intellectual property theft. Document 2, full restitution for the $28,000 wedding reception fraudulently charged to the foundation, plus interest." "That's extortion," Calvin's lawyer protested. Patricia stood up. "It's a settlement offer. Sign both documents. Transfer the restitution funds from your remaining personal account. We know you have $40,000 in Farm Credit Bank, and Mountain View Holdings will suspend the foreclosure for 14 days to allow voluntary transfer. Don't sign, and we proceed with the auction plus file additional civil suits for defamation, tortious interference, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." I placed the documents on the table in front of them, along with a pen. Then I reached into my briefcase for one more item, the folded wedding veil I'd removed that night, still creased from being shoved in Maya's closet. "Remember this." I set it next to the papers. "You paid for it with stolen charity money. The least you can do is pay that back with your own funds." Calvin's hand shook as he picked up the pen. "If I sign, you'll stop no more lawsuits. The civil matters end. The federal charges are out of my hands. That's between you and the FBI." He looked at Marjorie, who had tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. She nodded once. Calvin signed both documents, his signature barely legible. The court clerk notarized them immediately. Patricia had arranged that in advance. "Transfer the funds now," I instructed. "Mobile banking. Patricia will verify receipt." It took Calvin 3 tries to log into his account with trembling fingers. 4 minutes later, Patricia confirmed, $28,000 received. I picked up the wedding veil, folded it once more, and handed it to Marjorie. "A souvenir of the night you thought you broke me." Dennis the auctioneer cleared his throat. "So, the auction is suspended. 14 days, I confirmed. They'll transfer the deed voluntarily, or we resume proceedings." As I walked back to my seat, Calvin called out, "Why 14 days? Why not 30? I turned back. "Because that's exactly how long you gave me to apologize after the wedding. You said I had 2 weeks to come crawling back. Consider this poetic justice." Marjorie stood up, clutching the veil. "You've won. Elena, you've destroyed us. Are you happy now?" I thought about it honestly. No, I'm not happy. I'm free. There's a difference. Outside the courthouse, Kiara lit a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign. That was remarkably controlled. I expected more drama. Drama is what they wanted that night at my wedding spectacle. Tears. Begging. I pulled my coat tighter against the Denver wind. I gave them paperwork and deadlines, the opposite of what they trained me to be. Patricia checked her phone. "The $40,000 covers my entire fee plus filing costs. What do you want to do with the remaining $6,000? Donate it to the Denver Youth Foundation, a real charity, anonymous donation." Kiara laughed. "You know what I love about this in 60 days. You went from being their victim to their creditor. That's the most elegant revenge I've ever seen." My phone buzzed. Maya. 3 new clients signed during the auction. Apparently, standing up to bullies is good for business. Also, Agent Coleman called. "Your parents' trial date is set for March." I looked back at the courthouse where my parents were probably still sitting, trying to understand how their carefully constructed world had collapsed. They'd spent decades building their empire on other people's money and reputations. It took me 600 days to audit their books, liquidate their assets, and foreclose on their future. The wedding bouquet had wilted in hours, but my revenge had compounded daily, with interest they never saw coming. The December sun was setting over Sandbar Lodge's frozen dock, painting the ice in shades of amber and gold. 5:17 p.m. on the 13th day after the auction. Tomorrow would mark the deadline, but Calvin had called that morning they would sign over the deed today. I stood alone on the dock where Marjorie's grandfather had supposedly built his first boat. The property was mine now, transferred an hour ago in a sterile conference room where my parents couldn't meet my eyes. No dramatics, no final confrontation, just signatures on paper and the quiet changing of keys. Behind me, I heard footsteps on the wooden planks, Patricia, carrying a banker's box. "The last of the Foundation's documents," she said, setting it down. "The state prosecutor said you can keep these copies for your records." I didn't open it. I knew what was inside evidence of 20 years of theft disguised as charity, manipulation dressed as parenting. "What will you do with the property?" Patricia asked. "Haven't decided." I watched a lone duck break through thin ice, swimming in determined circles. Maybe sell it. Maybe donate it to an actual youth program. Or maybe I'll keep it as a reminder. Of what? That family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And they chose to be strangers the night they tried to break me for entertainment. Patricia left me with the box and the keys. I stood there until the sun disappeared completely, until the dock lights came on automatically sensors I'd had installed that morning. Practical improvements to a property that had been left to decay under my parents' ownership, just like everything else they'd touched. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Waypoint just hit $5 million in annual recurring revenue. Celebration dinner. I smiled, typing back, "Order Thai food to the office. I'll bring champagne." Before leaving, I walked through the lodge one more time. In what had been Calvin's study, I found the wedding photo they'd kept on the mantel not from my disaster of a reception, but from their own wedding 40 years ago. Young faces full of promise before greed rotted them from the inside. I took the photo, frame and all, and walked back to the dock. Without ceremony, I dropped it into the hole the duck had made in the ice. It sank immediately, disappearing into the dark water below. From my car, I grabbed the one thing I'd brought with me, my wedding veil, the one I'd made Marjorie take at the auction. She'd left it on the courthouse steps, probably thinking it was some kind of power move, but I'd kept it for this moment. I draped it over the dock's railing, where the wind caught it immediately. It fluttered like a ghost in the dock lights, a haunted remnant of the person they'd tried to create, obedient, broken, silent. Tomorrow, the cleaning crew would find it frozen to the wood. They'd throw it away with the rest of the garbage. Tonight, it was my flag of victory. I pulled out my key ring, heavy with New Edition's Waypoint's office, my own apartment, the lodge, Patricia's spare office key for late-night strategy sessions. Each one earned, not given. Each one mine, not theirs. The lodge's main door locked with a solid click. I didn't look back as I walked to my car, a used Tesla I'd bought with my third commission check. Nothing fancy but reliable and mine. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of movement in my rearview mirror. The wind had pulled the veil free from the railing. It danced across the frozen lake like it was celebrating its freedom, disappearing into the darkness beyond the dock lights. My phone rang through the car speakers. "Maya, where are you?" "Leaving Sandbar Lodge. Just closed the last chapter." "How do you feel?" I thought about it as I merged onto I-70 heading back to Denver, back to the life I'd built from spite and spreadsheets. Like I've been auditing a company for 2 years and finally balanced the books. Every debt collected, every credit recorded. "That's the most Elena Hart thing you've ever said." We laughed, and it felt clean, untainted by history or hurt. "Hey, Maya. That night at my wedding, when I texted you about starting the company, why did you already have the incorporation papers ready?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because I'd been watching them hurt you for years. I knew eventually you'd either break or break free." I wanted to be ready when you chose freedom. I wiped my eyes, grateful for the dark highway hiding my tears. I'll be at the office in 40 minutes, I said. Thai food will be hot, champagne will be cold, and tomorrow we have 3 new client pitches. Tomorrow, I repeated. No looking back. The GPS showed 38 miles to Denver. In my rearview mirror, Sandbar Lodge had already disappeared into the darkness. Ahead, the city lights beckoned sharp and bright and full of possibilities that had nothing to do with my maiden name. My mother had gripped that microphone at my wedding and declared me her most expensive failed investment. 600 days later, I'd returned the evaluation with interest. The debt was settled. The books were closed. My name is Elena Hart, and I am nobody's loss but my own gain. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this tale of justice served cold, and share your thoughts on Elena's journey. What would you have done in her situation? Let me know in the comments.